I am Swapnil, and I'm a faculty at Abhigyan Academy, Guwahati. So we have started a new initiative from our side. So what are we trying to do is that we will be discussing some important current affairs topics with regards to your CDS and NDA examinations. Because hota kya hai, what happens is that now what UPSC is doing is that UPSC is concentrating more on current affairs and linking it with the static syllabus rather than asking straightforward questions from static syllabus itself. So it becomes really important to understand the concepts of your static syllabus so that you can combine it and kind of supplement it along with the current affairs that you study daily. And current affairs henceforth it becomes a very integral part of your preparation, because this is one thing that I tell all my students and everybody else, that if you don't do current affairs, then it's impossible to clear any exam that you sit for in the government sector, whether it's defense or whatever other thing you're going for. It becomes impossible to clear it without studying current affairs. Agar current affairs nahi kiya, even God cannot help you to clear the exam. So to make sure that students are in touch with the kind of current affairs or the certain topics from which current affairs are regularly and repeatedly asked in the examinations such as NDA CDS by the UPSC, uh, we will be conducting such sessions on regular intervals to talk about certain important current affairs from the as a whole news that comes daily. Now why we are doing this is that there is a whole lot of news. There's a whole lot of news that comes out every day. Okay, and what becomes important here is that rather than just knowing what you have to study, it becomes very important for each and every student to understand what not to study. Why what not to study? Because there are a lot of things in the newspaper which are irrelevant for your examination. Now if these things are irrelevant for your examination and you go into deep studying for these topics, then what happens is that you end up wasting a lot of time for yourself. Now that is why, to help you in filtrating those topics and come down to the topics that are important for your exam, we are starting this new initiative, and I will be covering current affairs and I will be linking them with your static syllabus as and where it is required, and I will be discussing topic wise PYQs as we go ahead, uh, so that you have a touch with the current affairs on a regular basis, and also you get a fair idea that what kind of topics end up coming in the examination and what are the things you need to exclude from your preparation so that you do not end up wasting your time. Okay, so without any further delay, let's start with today's session. uh, as I've already said, this is a new initiative by our coaching center. I will be discussing current affairs which are in the news, and I will be linking them with the static part as and where it is required to link with the static part. And wherever I come across important PYQs in the topics that we will discuss today and in the further days to come, I will be discussing PYQs as well. And I will be also pointing out that कैसे type of questions, what type of questions are asked from these topics generally. Okay, so let's move ahead. So the first topic or the first news that we are going to cover from the recent current affairs is that INS Shivalik reaches Guam, an island territory in the US. Now, why did it visit this part of the world? Why did INS Shivalik visit Guam? Okay, so as the news says, the visit is part of sorry, the visit is part of an operational deployment of Indian Navy's Eastern Fleet to the South China Sea and Pacific Ocean. Now, why? Because why operational deployment? Because it's a part of their routine, you can say routine deployment or a routine patrol by the Indian Navy. Now, why in this particular part, South China Sea? Because, see, to be very honest and to be very practical, India has two neighbors on two sides who have been really bothering for India since the past 7 decades since India received its independence. Now, why? Because China has a very expansionist policy, as we all know, and it has been going through not aggressive, but it has been passively aggressive in expanding its territory through a lot of measures like Belt and Road Initiative, then you know getting countries in their clutches using uh, financial grants that they provide to country during their uh, financial crisis. Like if we talk about Sri Lanka, Nepal, all of these countries, they have got an inclination towards China gradually with time. Why? Because they were funded by China during their financial crisis, and a lot of countries have been taken under their Belt and Road Initiative, the BRI, which has given China a stronghold in the South Asia region. Now, to counter this, to make sure that in these regions China is not becoming too dominant, it becomes very important for the Indian Navy to conduct a few operational deployments in these regions. Okay. Now, let's talk about this place, Guam Island, where INS Shivalik was deployed as a part of their routine deployment. So, where is it located? It is located in the south, in the southernmost part of the Mariana Islands in the northern Pacific Ocean. And one thing to remember here is that it is the largest island in the Mariana Islands in the northern Pacific Ocean. Now, this is a very important thing to remember. Now, let me tell you something. I will give you an idea. Once, I think a couple of years back, when the Russia-Ukraine war had started, uh, and right after the COVID first wave, when US vacated the territory of Afghanistan and they were reoccupied by the Taliban, what UPSC did during those times is that, in one paper, UPSC asked that which are the bordering countries of Afghanistan. And in another paper, UPSC asked that what are the bordering countries of Ukraine. Now, let me tell you something. You must be thinking that यार ये यूपीएससी किसी भी कंट्री का नेबरिंग कंट्री पूछ ले रहा है. Do we have to, there are something around 195 countries in the world, do we have to go and remember the bordering countries of each country now? No, you don't have to do that. What UPSC is doing here is that, see, UPSC asked the bordering countries of Ukraine at that time because Ukraine was in the news. If you would have followed the news, if you would have known, because when the news regarding the Russia-Ukraine war was coming out, they were also discussing what are the bordering countries of Russia, what are the bordering countries of Ukraine, because there was huge migration of civilians during the war. Civilians were migrating in the neighboring countries, especially from Ukraine, to take refuge from war. Okay? So now here also, the UPSC might give you a statement-based question that which of these following statements are correct, 1, 2, 3. They will give you the options 1 and 2, 2 and 3, 3 and 4, so on and so forth. Now, one statement might come that Guam Island is the largest island among the Mariana Islands. Now, some students who did not go through this part of current affairs might start thinking that, कि अरे अब क्या हर island का याद रखना पड़ेगा? Do I have to remember every island which is, like, is it the largest? Is it the smallest? Is it the second largest? Where is it in the size merit list? No, it does not matter. They will ask you if Guam Island is the largest because Guam Island was in the news recently. Okay, so it becomes very important that when you come across a news, when you are coming across a news in the newspaper or the internet or wherever, it becomes really important for you to try and understand the background of the points that have been mentioned. Like in this news, in this piece of news, we are talking about INS Shivalik, we are talking about Guam. So it becomes really important for you to understand the background of INS Shivalik and Guam. Okay, so let's go ahead. Where is Guam Island located? It's located at the southernmost point of Mariana Islands, and it is the largest island in the island group, and it's located in the northern Pacific Ocean. Now, this island, as it says, it's an island territory of the US. So let me tell you, it was acquired by the United States of America in the year 1898. This is another thing to remember. Why? Because UPSC has made a habit nowadays to put a date. They will put a statement as a statement 1, 2, 3. They will put a statement and ask you which of the statements are correct. And they have a tendency, they'll put a certain date regarding a certain incident, and they will put the date as an incorrect fact. They will put it's 1898. They will put it something like 1897. This is a trick, and that time you have to identify whether it's right or wrong. And there is another thing. When you are applying the elimination method in these statement based questions to eliminate the incorrect statements, it becomes very important for you to remember certain sure short facts. As soon as you remember this thing, 1898, and you see a statement where it says 1897, then you know for a fact that that particular statement is wrong for sure, and then you can do elimination from the statements accordingly. Okay, so keep in mind to remember certain facts in the story, so that when the question appears, you can take that on the basis of that factual statement. You can just get a sure shot statement whether it's correct or incorrect, like something you can bet your life on, and then you can go ahead and do the elimination in the remaining options and the remaining statements. Now, what are the people, the native people of Guam Island are called? They are called the Comoros. The Comoros are the native inhabitants of the Guam Islands, and the capital of Guam Island is Hagatna. Hagatna is the capital of Guam Islands. Now, why was this thing in the news? Why, as I said, this was an operational deployment. Why was this deployment done? This deployment was done basically during an exercise, a military exercise known as RIMPAC. The RIMPAC exercise took part in the year 2024. Now, what is RIMPAC? I will be discussing in the further parts. Before that, let's look at what INS Shivalik is. Okay, there's a certain ship, right? INS Shivalik. So, what is INS Shivalik? Let's look at that. Now, INS Shivalik is India's first stealth multi-role frigate. Now, what is a stealth frigate? Let me tell you what is a stealth frigate. As the name suggests, it has the word stealth. Now, what does stealth mean? Stealth means to do something, in a very conspicuous manner without getting caught or without getting detected. That is the literal meaning of the word stealth. Jaise you see a lot of things, you might have played a lot of video games also where they talk about things like stealth operations. Stealth operations are things like where you execute your task without getting caught, without being seen, like chup chup ke काम निकाल देना और पकड़े ना जाना. That is the meaning of stealth. So what is a stealth frigate? As you know, countries have radar systems, they have infrared systems, they have sonar systems, है ना? They have laser systems. These are systems which are used to detect external things such as ships, aircrafts, so on and so forth. Okay. Now, what will a stealth frigate do is that it is built in such a way. It is built in such a way that it will carry out its tasks in a very low key fashion. And what happens as a result of that? It is built with such technology that it can evade being detected by. It can evade being detected by a lot of detection methods like the radar method, the infrared method, the sonar method, so on and so forth. So that is what a stealth frigate is. Now, frigates are fundamentally different from a class of ships which are known as destroyers. Now, how are they different from destroyers? The most basic difference is in their armament and their degree of aggression in combat. Destroyer ships are much more armed and they are much more aggressive and powerful when they are in the field of combat, while on the other hand, frigates are very armed at a very lesser degree than destroyer ships, and they are much lesser aggressive than destroyer ships. Now that is a very required thing in common terms, because if you have to do something under a stealth mode of operation, if you have to do something without getting caught, then it actually becomes important for you to be equipped with less armament than a ship which can easily get caught on radar. Okay, now who built INS Shivalik? INS Shivalik was built by the Mazgaon Dock Limited, which is situated in Bombay or Mumbai. Now, let's come to this particular military exercise, RIMPAC 2024. Okay, so what is RIMPAC 2024? RIMPAC is the world's largest maritime exercise and it took place in Hawaii. Now, what's a maritime exercise? See, there are different kinds of exercises. There are territorial exercises. There are different military exercises. It can be territorial, which is done by basically the territorial army or the regular army of the country. There are exercises which are aerial exercises, which are basically conducted by the air forces of the different countries. And you have the maritime exercises. The maritime exercises are they take place in the marine region in the sea, and they are conducted by the naval forces of different countries. Now, if we look at these exercises are of different types, again based on the number of teams or the number of parties that take place in the exercise. There is something known as a unilateral exercise. A unilateral exercise is something where the force of a single country is participating and executing the military exercise. There is something known as a bilateral exercise. Bilateral exercise is something in which the forces of two different countries are taking part together to conduct the exercise. For example, the exercise Vajra Prahar or the exercise Maitri, these are exercises of the Indian forces with other countries, but only a single country. For example, the exercise Maitri takes place between India and Thailand. But RIMPAC, RIMPAC is a multilateral exercise. What is a multilateral exercise? It means that more than two countries or many countries take part in this particular exercise and conduct it. Now, as I said, RIMPAC is the world's largest maritime exercise and it takes place in Hawaii. Hawaii is a region in the United States of America. It's a coastal region. Just like, we have a very tourist attractive coastal region like Goa, Hawaii is one such place in the United States. Now, why does this RIMPAC exercise take place? What is the purpose? The purpose is to enhance naval cooperation and trust. Now, common sense. Why do these countries come together and conduct these exercises? So that, there is a mutual trust between these different military forces, that in times of any kind of adversities, they can come together and they can pool in their forces to contribute to tackling the adversity. Now, with this is also building trust, and when you're conducting an exercise together, it also builds a sense of cooperation between the different naval forces. Now, what was the theme of this year's RIMPAC exercise? The theme was partners integrated and prepared. This is a very important thing to remember. The theme is a very important thing to remember, because it is a common thing in exams nowadays that the UPSC especially comes up with an exercise or a particular special day of the year, say World AIDS Day, World Anti-Tobacco Day, or World Women Day, the rim pack exercise, or World Water Day, whatever, they will just come up with something special that took place during this year, and they will just ask you which of the following was the theme of this particular event this year. And therefore, if you are writing the exam, say in 2024, it becomes very important for you to remember the themes of important events from 2023 to the events in 2024 that are taking place before your exam. Here also, the theme of the RIMPAC exercise is partners integrated and prepared. Please jot it down. Please jot it down, because as and when I am going on with this session, and whenever I will be talking about something very important for your examination point of view, you can please keep a copy and pen open in front of you, and you can go ahead and jot it down point wise so that you don't forget it later on. Now, the leadership who led the impact exercise, the Navy of the United States led the exercise among all the countries, and the number of participants, 29 countries participated in this exercise. As I said before, RIMPAC is a multilateral exercise. It is not bilateral because it has more than two. It is not unilateral also because it has more than one. It has many, it's more than two participants, it has many participants, hence this is a multilateral, it is a multilateral exercise. And as we can see here, it has 29 countries, which means that the naval forces from 29 different countries came together and took part in this exercise in Hawaii. Now let's move to the next topic. The next topic is that the ICJ is to present an advisory opinion on global environmental obligations as small island nations raise alarm. What does it mean? We will be going into the fact that what does it actually mean. ICJ's ruling can bolster climate change response as apex judicial authority in the world seeks to clarify long-standing environment claims and disputes. Now, before going into the further details, let's look at what ICJ actually is. So ICJ actually stands for the International Court of Justice, and it is the principal judicial organ of the United Nations. United Nations has different organs: the UNESCO, the UNICEF, the ECOSOC, the WHO, so on and so forth. So like all of them, like WHO is for the health sector, it's the health organ of the UN. Then we have the UNESCO, which is basically the cultural organ of the UN. We have the UNICEF, which is the education and development of children organ of the UN. We have the ECOSOC, which is the economical and social organ of the UN. We have the UNDP, which is the developmental organ of the UN, which looks after the developmental progress of different countries. Similarly, for the judicial part also, we have a judicial organ, which is known as the ICJ, the International Court of Justice. So, what does ICJ basically do is that, what is its purpose? Why has it been made? It resolves the legal disputes between states and provides advisory opinions. So, what it basically does is that in the country, say within India, we have the Supreme Court of India, we have different high courts. What does it do? It resolves the disputes or the cases that take, or legal disputes, basically legal disputes that take place between different parties within the territory of India. Okay, but now say for a fact, what if the legal dispute is not taking place between two parties within the nation? It might take place between two different nations as well. Now there might be a legal dispute between, say, there are two countries, country A and country B. Now, if there is a legal dispute taking place between country A only, then country A has its own Supreme Court, High Court, whatever to take care of those issues. But what will happen if there is a dispute between two different countries, A and B? In this case, the case may be referred to the International Court of Justice, who will hear the case, and based on all statements, evidences, and the case files, based on the merits of the case, based on the pith and substance of the case, the court will provide an advisory opinion that how the states, the country should act in order to resolve the matter. Now, where are the headquarters of, where is the headquarter of ICJ situated? It's situated in Hague. The Hague is a place in the Netherlands, and the headquarter is known as Peace Palace. Now, see, since ICJ is in the news for this particular opinion, what the UPSC might do is that it might come up with a question regarding ICJ. Now you will start thinking that so many organs in the UN, how will I know that UPSC will come up with a statement or a question on ICJ only? इतने सारे अब सबका थोड़े याद करेंगे. No. Why this particular thing UPSC came up with in the exam? Because this was in the news recently. There is no other reason. Always remember, if UPSC has come up with an abstract question regarding an abstract thing, कि इसके बारे में क्यों पूछ रहा है, just remember कि कहीं ना कहीं somewhere in the news this topic has actually come up somewhere, and hence UPSC came up with that particular topic only. As I said before, UPSC in one paper asked what are the bordering nations of the Black Sea. Now, why out of everything the Black Sea only? There are a lot of other seas. Why did they come up with the neighboring, the countries of the Black Sea only? Why? Because Black Sea was in the news due to the Russia-Ukraine war. And if it was in the news regarding the Russia-Ukraine war, you naturally you are bound to go into the merits of the topic and look into the background of the Black Sea also. बस ऐसा नहीं कि रशिया यूक्रेन वार हो रहा है, ये मार रहा है, वो मार रहा है, he is killing this person, he is killing this person, Zelensky bad, Putin bad. No, you actually have to go deeper into the topic, and you have to study it like a person who's, say, you're researching it. When you see a news, you have to think of it like something you're researching it, कि तुमने over कहीं पे देख लिया न्यूज़पेपर में, but you later on you go back and you see that what is the background of the whole thing. Now, the ICJ was established in the year 1945. It was established in 1945, but it's operational since 1946. Now, remember the difference. Established 1945, operational since 1946. It means that ये institution बंद तो गया था 1945 में, but इसने काम करना शुरू किया है since 1946. ठीक है? Then, what does it compose of? What is the composition of the ICJ? Like we have a composition in our Supreme Court, we have a composition in our High Court. For example, the Supreme Court has a collegium. Supreme Court has a collegium. It has the Chief Justice of India. Then it has other puisne judges as well. So similarly, the International Court of Justice will also have its composition of judges. So what is the composition there? Here, there are 15 judges in total, and all these 15 judges, they are elected, and they have a tenure of 9 years. They have a tenure of 9 years. Okay, so the composition of ICJ is such that total there are 15 judges on the ICJ bench, and all these 15 judges, they serve for a tenure of 9 years, and they are elected judges. Now, since ICJ is an international body, it's an international body, so it represents the whole world, all the continents, Australia, India, Australia, Asia, Europe, Africa, Americas. So, okay, ऐसा तो है नहीं कि अब इसका हेडक्वार्टर नेदरलैंड्स में है तो इसके सारे जज भी नेदरलैंड से होंगे. नो, दे आर रिप्रेजेंटिंग द होल वर्ल्ड, सो द कंपोजिशन हैज टू बी सच दैट देयर इज प्रोपोर्शनल रिप्रेजेंटेशन फ्रॉम ईच एंड एवरी पार्ट ऑफ द वर्ल्ड. सो वो मेक श्योर कैसे होता है, एज यू कैन सी, there is a proportional representation from different regions of the globe or different regions of the world. ये जो 15 judges है, all 15 of them are not from one single part of the world. Out of this 15, 3 judges are from Africa, 2 are from Latin America and the Caribbean islands. The Caribbean islands is basically what you also call as the West Indies. Then you have 3 judges from Asia, 5 judges from Western Europe and other countries, and 2 judges from Eastern Europe. So this is how these 15 judges are divided. 3 are coming from the African continent, 2 are coming from Latin America and the Caribbean islands. Okay, Latin America is nothing but South America, which consists of countries like Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, so on and so forth. There are 3 judges from Asia. Now in Europe, there is a differentiation, as in Europe, there is a differentiation between East and West Europe. From Western Europe, we are getting 5 judges. From Eastern Europe, we are getting 2 judges. Okay. And it's not just Western Europe, but other places as well, whichever other places are not mentioned here. 5 judges from Eastern Europe and other regions, and 2 judges from the eastern part of Europe, which consists of countries like Poland. नाउ जजेस तो आ गए, 15 जजेस तो आ गए, ठीक है। अब उनके लीडर भी तो होना पड़ेगा। फॉर एग्जाम्पल, वी हैव अ लॉट ऑफ जजेस इन द सुप्रीम कोर्ट, बट वन अमंग देम इज द चीफ जस्टिस ऑफ इंडिया, द लीडर ऑफ ऑल द जजेस, है ना। In the high courts, we have the chief justice of the high court leading all the other judges. Similarly, in the ICJ as well, among all the 15 judges, we have someone known as the president. This president is elected from among the judges only, and he or she is elected after every 3-year intervals. Don't get confused here. जो judges है, दो judges है, they have a total tenure of 9 years. 9 years tenure, ठीक है, and there are a total of 15, and the region wise demarcation is also given here. They have a total tenure of 9 years, but among these judges, after every 3 years, a new president is elected among them as the leader of all the judges. मतलब ऐसा भी हो सकता है कि अगर किसी जज का टेन्योर 9 years है, वो 3 साल president बन जाएगा, but बाकी 6 साल he might not be the president as well. Just remember this. Now, what are the functions? As I said, dispute resolution includes territorial, maritime, diplomatic, and treaty issues. These are basically nothing but the most basic disputes that arise between two different countries. Territorial disputes, disputes on territory, जैसे India and Pakistan, they have a dispute on POK, Pakistan occupied Kashmir, which has been illegally occupied by Pakistan since the late 1940s after independence. Then there is an area known as Aksai Chin. It's a disputed territory between India and China. Similarly, there are a lot of other regions which are disputed between two countries. Those are territorial disputes. Then we have maritime disputes. Maritime disputes are nothing but disputes in the oceanic territory between two nations. Diplomatic disputes, like when there is a diplomatic crisis, when like a diplomatic crisis that's currently taking place between India and Canada, that is something which is known as diplomatic crisis, when diplomacy is failing and countries are withdrawing their diplomats from their respective regions. Yes, so currently it's happening in Canada. India is taking out its diplomats from Canada. Canada is dismissing the Indian diplomats. India is dismissing the Canadian diplomats, so on and so forth. These are diplomatic disputes and treaty issues. Say there is a particular treaty between two nations, two or more nations, and one of the country ends up violating the treaty. For example, there is the Panchsheel agreement between India and China, but on several occasions, China has tried to find out loopholes in the agreement and has tried to violate it. Also, other than dispute resolution, the ICJ also serves as an advisory body for UN as in all the UN bodies which are there. If the UN's bodies like UNESCO, UNICEF, ECOSOC, WHO, UNDP, uh, the UNEP, UNEP, if they come up with any kind of issues, then the ICJ might end up giving some kind of advice to these United Nations bodies to come up with a solution. Now, what is basically the news here? The news basically here says that there are a lot of small islands, which are small island nations across our globe. They are mostly situated near the American continent, and they have raised an alarm that the alarm which is basically raised by the small island nations is that जैसे जैसे climate change is taking place, the glaciers are melting, global warming is rising, the sea level is rising. So eventually, over the years, what will happen is that the small island nations will be the one to suffer. Because why? Because these are very small nations, small in size. In between the sea, as the sea level will rise, these islands will eventually be submerged. Now think of it, if the island is getting submerged, uh, some people will lose their property, people will lose their lives, and people will lose their homes. Most importantly, they will be displaced from these nations. Now if, say, a particular native community from a small island nation is getting displaced, what will happen is that now they will be going to different nations where they will be treated as immigrants or refugees. And in times of crisis, during the times of crisis, when somebody has to vacate their country and they have to, move to different countries for refuge, they do not get the time to, file for visa and legal immigration. मतलब तुम्हारा घर डूब रहा है, कल समुंदर तुम्हारा पूरा शहर खा जाएगा, will you have the time to go to a visa office, get a visa stamp on your passport and go to a different country? You won't get the time for that. You People will move immediately, and what will happen as a result? When they end up as such visa less, documentless refugees in different countries, they will be treated as illegal immigrants. Okay, and they will be treated as second class citizens there. So होगा क्या अगर क्लाइमेट चेंज को हमने नहीं रोका? If climate change is not stopped, then these small island nations will gradually be submerged in the sea, and in the moment of emergency, lot of people will leave their homes in these islands, they will get displaced, अलग अलग कंट्रीज में चले जाएंगे जान बचाने के लिए. डॉक्यूमेंटेशन का टाइम उनके पास होगा नहीं, they will not have the time to do any kind of documentation, and they will scatter away in different countries without documents, end up as illegal refugees there, and despite having their homes, they will become second class citizens and illegal immigrants. Now, and why will this take place? This will take place solely because of global environmental changes. ठीक है? So these small island nations have raised an alarm, and they have raised a dispute that जो बड़े बड़े countries है, the environmental pollution or the carbon footprint left by those particular big nations is basically causing us a moment of harm, and they are causing us and like they are putting us as an at an environmental risk. Because ये बड़े बड़े countries तो खुद को बचा लेंगे, they are doing environmental pollution, they are leaving a huge carbon footprint, it's their thing, and they will take care of it because they are developed nations. But आप जो कचरा फैला रहे हो, वो कचरा हमारे गार्डन में आके गिर रहा है, and what's happening is that you will take care of yourself, but when the sea level will rise, we are the ones who will go down in the ocean, and our people are the ones who will be displaced from their homes. So that is why the small island nations have raised an alarm, and because of these particular disputes, the ICJ has decided that it will provide an advisory opinion on global environmental obligations, which is basically ICJ will give certain advice to the bigger nations basically, and the advice will be given as few environmental obligations as in certain guidelines that these big developed nations should follow, so that the carbon footprint is reduced, so that they contribute to the environment responsibly, so as to, as a final result, protect the small island nations from getting submerged in the ocean with time, and protect their civilization as well. Now, let's look at a few more details of the ICJ. It is a United Nations body, as I said, and the mandate, it was established by the UN Charter. The UN Charter is basic, like we have the Constitution of India, we have the Constitution of the United States. There's a rule, it's a rule book, right? Similarly, the United Nations has a particular rule book. That rule book is known as the UN Charter, and the United Nations run on the whatever mandate and whatever rules are set by the UN Charter. It's an independent body established through ratification of the Roman Statute. The Roman Statute is nothing but an agreement, and this agreement was ratified, and this body was set up as an independent body, which is the International Court of Justice. Now, let's look at a certain difference. जैसे we have one uh, particular body known as the ICJ, the International Court of Justice. Along with that, we have another international court. It is known as the ICC. The ICC is not the International Cricket Council or whatever. It is the International Criminal Court here. Okay, so we have two international legal bodies. Two international legal bodies. The ICJ, International Court of Justice, and the ICC, International Criminal Court. Now let's look at the difference between the two. Okay, as I said, setting up the International Court of Justice, it was set up by the mandate of the UN Charter. The UN Charter is a rule book of the UN, and hence, since it was set up by the UN Charter, the rule book of the UN, this particular body is a body under the United Nations. But let's look at the International Criminal Court. The International Criminal Court is an independent body. It is an independent body. It is not under any kind of United Nations or whatever. Why? Because it was not set up by the UN Charter. It was not set up by the rule book or the ratification of the United Nations. It was set up by the ratification of the Rome Statute, not by the UN Charter. If it would have been set up by the UN Charter, by the rule book of the UN, then the ICC will also have been a United Nations body, like the ICJ. But it's not the case with the ICC. The ICC was set up by the Rome Statute, and hence it is an independent body, unlike the ICJ. The ICJ comes under the United Nations. Let's look at now the membership and jurisdiction. The ICJ has 193 members, 193 members of the United Nations. All 193 United Nations member states are members of the ICJ as well, because naturally ICJ is a body under the UN. But that is not the case with ICC. अब देखो, ICJ is a part of the United Nations. So automatically United Nations के सारे members ICJ के भी part हो जाएंगे. But ICC में ये case है नहीं. ICC is an independent body. ICC is not a part of the UN, so of course all members of UN will not be a part of the ICC. Only 123 state parties to the Rome Statute are part of the ICC. ये जो Rome Statute है, this particular international agreement which was ratified, it was ratified by only 123 nations out of all the total nations, and hence only 123 countries are members of the ICC. Now, what is the scope or jurisdiction of these different courts? The ICJ is for legal matters, जैसे border disputes, treaty violations, sovereignty, human rights violations, so on and so forth. Border disputes like the India-Pakistan border dispute on POK. Then treaty violations, as I said, say things like the violation of the Panchsheel Treaty by China, sovereignty, say a country's sovereignty is being harmed by another country, एक country अपने मन मर्जी का decision ले नहीं पा रहा है, दूसरे country से उसको पूछना पड़ रहा है. So in cases of sovereignty for human rights violations, if some country is doing a blatant violation of human rights, then that will be under the scope of ICJ. But the ICC takes care of criminal matters such as genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, crimes of aggression in the future, maybe like ecocide. Now, what are the genocide is basically nothing but what Hitler did. Genocide basically means mass killing of people. Okay, that is known as genocide. Or crimes against humanity. Like now, genocide is a subset of crimes against humanity. Crimes against humanity can be anything. Dropping a random nuclear bomb on a small town is also a crime against humanity. Genocide is also a crime against humanity. So crime against humanity is a very broad term. You can say that genocide is just a subset of crimes against humanity. War crimes, crimes that take place during war, and other crimes that may take place in the future. These kind of criminal matters are handled by the International Criminal Court. The number of trials so far, the ICJ has taken care of 181 trials, while the ICC has only taken care of 14 trials. The enforcement. How are the judgments or the opinions or the advisors of these different courts are enforced? The enforcement for the ICJ judgments, the enforcement takes place through the UNSC or the United Nations Security Council resolutions. What basically happens is that if the International Court of Justice passes a certain judgment, then how will the judgment be compulsorily enforced on the countries? The United Nations Security Council will come up with a resolution. They will pass the resolution, and the resolution will be passed such that the resolution contains the judgment of the ICJ, and hence the post the passing of the resolution, the ICJ judgment will be enforced on all the member countries. While how are the ICC judgments enforced? Domestic law enforcement can ask the United Security Council to step in as well. Domestic law enforcement means that if the International Criminal Court comes up and gives out a judgment, then the countries who are part to the dispute can come up with domestic laws to enforce the judgment of the ICC in their respective countries. And if that does not work out, the parties to the case can go up and they can request the United Nations Security Council to step in and come up with a unanimous resolution to enforce the judgment of the International Criminal Court. Now, the composition difference, as I said before, there are 15 judges in the ICJ, but in the ICC there are 18 judges, and there is one similarity between both the courts is that ICJ has 15 judges, ICC has 18 judges, but in both the courts each judge has a tenure of 9 years. Now let's come to the next topic. The next topic is regarding a military exercise known as exercise Mitra Shakti. As I said before, there are different kinds of exercises based on the number of participants. One is a unilateral exercise, only one country takes place. There is a bilateral exercise, two countries take place. Then there are multilateral exercise where many countries, more than two countries, will take place. Now, this exercise, this military exercise known as the exercise Mitra Shakti, is a bilateral exercise. It's a bilateral exercise. Why? Because it consists of the military forces from only two nations. One is India, the other one being Sri Lanka. Okay? Now, what happened in this exercise is that the Indian Army has fielded its tactical assault canine ZAC at the bilateral exercise in Sri Lanka. So, what are we getting to know from here is that the venue of the exercise Mitra Shakti for this time was Sri Lanka. This time the exercise Mitra Shakti took place with the participation of two countries, India and Sri Lanka, and the venue was Sri Lanka. And one important takeaway is that the Indian Army from their side fielded its tactical weapon, which is the assault K9 at the bilateral exercise. Now, what is the exercise? Let's look at that. Let's look at a gist of the exercise Mitra Shakti. It's a joint exercise, it's a joint military exercise which takes place between India and Sri Lanka. This is a very, very important thing for your defense exams. If you're sitting for any kind of defense exams, whether NDA, CDS, FF, CAPA, whatever, or you're going for your SSB, anywhere, one of the most important topics is to know about the military exercise in which our country India takes part. So, and these military exercises, they take place at certain intervals between different nations. Mitra Shakti is nothing but a bilateral exercise. It takes place between two countries, India and Sri Lanka. It's a joint military exercise. Which edition of Mitra Shakti was it? It was the 10th edition of Mitra Shakti, which means that this exercise has taken place for the 10th time between these two nations. The venue for this exercise this time was Sri Lanka. And how many participants were there? 120 soldiers from the Indian Army's Rajputana Rifles took part in this joint military exercise. What does it mean? India has different units and regiments. One of the most revered and dangerous regiments in the Indian Army is the Rajputana Rifles, and 120 soldiers from this particular regiment took part in this exercise Mitra Shakti along with Sri Lanka. Now, what was the focus or what were the takeaways from this exercise? The focus was joint operations in semi-urban environments. If military operations have to take place in semi-urban environments, for example, it's not a city and it's not a proper village also, it's a semi-urban place, it's a semi-urban environment. If in such kind of an environment a threat occurs, and at such a time, if an operation needs to be carried out by two different nations, here India and Sri Lanka, in a joint mode or a joint motive, then how will they carry out that? Basically, the military forces of both the nations, India and Sri Lanka, they tried to, you can say in layman's language, they practiced carrying out joint operations. Joint operations basically means operation carried out by the cooperation of one or more military forces, joint operations in semi-urban environment. Semi-urban means not a proper city also and not a village also, somewhere in between them. अगर किसी छोटे मोटे शहर में बेसिकली मान लो कुछ थ्रेट आ जाता है, then in that case how will two different forces come together and conduct a joint operation, उसका practice किया गया है इस बार exercise मित्र शक्ति में. It was aligned with the chapter 7 of the UN Charter, which is basically threats to peace and security. UN Charter मैंने आपको बताया, UN Charter क्या होता है? UN Charter होता है, the UN Charter, as I discussed before, it is the rule book of the UN. It has certain important rules and issues discussed on जिसके basis पे UN चलता है, जिसके basis पे UN operate करता है. For example, we have our Constitution of India, based on which the government of India, the judiciary of India, the executive of India, the prime minister, president, everyone works based on that. Similarly, the UN has the UN Charter, based on which the whole UN, including all its bodies, execute their work, and they work on the basis of the UN Charter only. Yes, the UN Charter can be changed, just like amendments. They can be changed along with time, with the uh, especially with the consent and the resolutions passed by mostly by the P5 countries. Now, what does chapter 7 of the UN Charter talks about? It talks about threats to peace and security. Now, the operation exercise Mitra Shakti, what was it basically doing? It was talking about conducting joint operations in semi-urban areas. वह अब operation करेगा क्यों कोई? आर्मी फोर्स, बेकार में तो करेगा नहीं। ऑपरेशन तभी किया जाएगा व्हेन इट हैज टू टैकल सम सेफ्टी इशू, सम सिक्योरिटी थ्रेट। तो इन दिस केस also the exercise was done so that operations can be carried out to tackle threats to peace and security. And agar the countries are working on something, if the countries are working on something which is required to tackle threats to peace and security, then they are aligning themselves with the chapter 7 of UN Charter. Why? Because chapter 7 of UN Charter talks about threats to peace and security. Now, some important points to remember here is that one special feature was that both countries, India and Sri Lanka, they included their tactical canines in the exercise. ठीक है? And for example, whom did our Indian Army deploy in this exercise? Indian Army deployed the canine Zack. Now, Zack is a Belgian Malinois from the Indian Army. ठीक है? This canine, Zack was deployed by the Indian Army in this particular exercise. Similarly, the Sri Lankan country also got canines from their own military force to deploy in this particular exercise. So ये एक special feature है इस बार के मित्र शक्ति का, ये please note it down और ये याद रखना. Why? Because they are including canines for their military exercise as well. ये देखो, as you can see here, look at this picture. This picture is from the India Sri Lanka joint exercise मित्र शक्ति. As यहाँ पे आप देख सकते हो, ये देखो, look at this guy here, a tactical canine from the Indian Army. He was included in the joint exercise training. Similarly, such canines from the uh, Sri Lankan Army also took part in this military exercise. Now, let's move on to the next piece of news. This news is regarding our Ministry of Commerce and Industry. ठीक है? तो ये न्यूज है क्या? Let's move ahead. Quality Council of India introduces QCI Surajya recognition and ranking framework to drive excellence in key sectors. Now, what is the Quality Council of India? पहले बैकग्राउंड चेक कर लेते हैं उसका. ठीक है? What is the Quality Council of India? Quality Council is, or the QCI in abbreviation, it is a not-for-profit organization, a non-profit organization, and it was set up in the year 1996 for accreditation. ठीक है? Accreditation क्या होता है? Accreditation is nothing but giving a rating. जैसे when you guys look for colleges, किसी कॉलेज में एडमिशन लेना है, you look out for the NAC accreditation, right? कि NAC accreditation क्या है इस particular कॉलेज का, A++ है, A+ है या B है या C है, क्या है, you look out for that. So accreditation is nothing but a rating certification given to a certain thing कि ये इतना अच्छा है, इसको ये ग्रेड दे सकते हैं. मतलब आप अगर एग्जाम दोगे तो आपको एग्जाम में A+, A-, B+, C, C+, D ये सब मिलेगा कि नहीं based on your result. So similarly, based on the quality of a certain thing, the QCI or the Quality Council of India will give a certain accreditation or a certain grading to a particular thing or substance. Now, ये चलता कैसे? ये QCI इसको सरकार चलाती है, the government runs it or any private individual runs it. Let's look at that. It runs on a PPP model. What is a PPP model? It's basically a public-private partnership. PPP का full form होता है public-private partnership. How is the QCI running? It's basically running based on a joint partner, you can say a joint partnership between the public sector and the private sector. ये partnership basically चलते कैसे है? If in general terms, in most of the cases, these public private partnerships, they take place based on a bidding model. Bidding model क्या होता है? This particular bodies, they are established by the government. The government establishes them, and फिर government bidding करता है इसका. Government puts out the bids कि whichever private body will come forth, and they will give, the most affordable tender to the government for maintenance and operations of this particular organization or this particular project. उसके बाद क्या होता है? The public sector is coming out with the idea. The private bidders will come, they will bid for the maintenance and the operations of that particular body or the particular project. Then the best bid will win the, you can say, the होल्ड ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर प्रोजेक्ट. वो पब्लिक सेक्टर से उस प्राइवेट बॉडी को मिल जाएगा. फिर क्या होगा? वो पब्लिक सेक्टर और प्राइवेट बॉडी साथ में मिलके उस बॉडी को चलाएंगे, एंड हेंस दिस मॉडल बिकम्स अ पब्लिक प्राइवेट पार्टनरशिप. नाउ व्हाट इज द ऑब्जेक्टिव ऑफ दिस बॉडी? चलो बॉडी बना दिया, क्वालिटी काउंसिल ऑफ इंडिया, अ न्यू टीम, न्यू बॉडी. नाउ व्हाट इज द motive of this particular body? What is the motive of this particular body? The motive of this body, the objective of this body is independent assessment of products, services and processes. मतलब इसका मतलब क्या हो गया? इसका मतलब ये हो जाता है कि it carries out independent assessment और independent tests. मतलब अपने ही मर्जी से, without taking orders from someone else, since it's a independent body, it will carry out certain assessment and tests for products, services and processes. We have different kind of products in the country: food products, construction products, uh, basically FMCG, banking, construction, infrastructure, electronics, the sin sector such as tobacco, alcohol, so on and so forth. Now all these things, these products and services, or the processes. What is meant by processes? If you want to get an end product in the market, अगर market में आपको कोई product release करना है, प्रोडक्ट रिलीज करने के पहले आपको एक प्रोसेस चाहिए. फॉर एग्जांपल द फूड प्रोडक्ट्स दैट कम इनटू द मार्केट, दे कम थ्रू द फूड प्रोसेसिंग इंडस्ट्री. अ सर्टेन प्रोसेस दे अंडरगो बिफोर कमिंग एज फाइनल एंड प्रोडक्ट्स इन द मार्केट. ठीक है. सो अगर प्रोसेस का क्वालिटी अच्छा नहीं होगा तो ऑफ कोर्स प्रोडक्ट का क्वालिटी भी अच्छा नहीं होगा. इफ द क्वालिटी ऑफ द प्रोसेस इज नॉट गुड, द प्रोडक्ट विल नॉट बी गुड. This is a matter of fact. So it also becomes important to keep a quality check on the process as well, so that the quality of the process is good. And if the quality of the process is good, then the quality of the product will also be good. है ना? So this is why this Quality Council of India (QCI) takes assessments of products, services, and processes to make sure that they are of a good quality for consumption. Now, what is the nodal ministry? The nodal ministry is the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. The Ministry of Commerce and Industry is the nodal ministry for QCI. Why? Because what is QCI basically doing? It's basically taking care of the quality control of different industries and commerce, the commercial sector in India, right? इंडिया में जो कमर्शियल सेक्टर है, जो भी सामान बिक रहा है, जो भी इंडस्ट्री सामान हमारे लिए बना रहा है, whatever end products and services we are getting, the Quality Council of India is taking a quality check of those things only. So therefore, the Quality Council of India will submit its report. The nodal agency for the Quality Council of India is the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, and each ministry has certain departments to take care of different issues. हर ministry में एक department होता है. As we know, a ministry has a minister, and under the minister there are ministers of state. Ministers of state basically take care of the different departments of the ministry. So similarly, one department known as the Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion, this particular department comes under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. यही department nodal agency है आपके QCI के reports का. The QCI will take assessments of products, services and processes, and they will submit this particular report to its nodal agency, which is nothing but the Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion, and this department comes under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. अब ये तो बॉडी हो गया आपका. ये एक बॉडी ऐसा कंपोजिशन क्या होगा? व्हाट विल बी द कंपोजिशन? It is composed of 38 members and it has equal representation from government, industry and consumers. अब देखो अगर क्वालिटी कंट्रोल करना है इंडस्ट्री का, ठीक है, so it needs representation from government also because government has to set the quality guidelines, ठीक है, it needs people from the industry also so that they can give their inputs कि वो कैसा प्रोडक्ट बनाने वाले हैं and what kind of products they are planning to put into the market. And you need consumers also because consumers are the end con consumers are like the what to say, they come at the end of the production chain and वही है जो उस प्रोडक्ट को कंज्यूम करेंगे. So they the प्रोडक्ट का जो क्वालिटी होगा वो सबसे ज्यादा इफेक्ट करेगा कंज्यूमर्स को. So consumers have to give their their opinion on what kind of quality of products or services they are willing to consume. So hence there is an equal representation from the government, the industry and from the consumers as well, जो टोटल मिलके it makes up to 38 members in the QCI. Now who's the chairman? The chairman is appointed by the PM, the prime minister. And ये chairman appointment होता कैसे है? This is based on industry recommendations. Industry में different industrialists are there. There are members from the industrial sector. होता क्या है? These people from the industrial sector, they come up with a certain recommendation. The recommendation is passed to the PM, the prime minister, and the prime minister appoints the chairman of the QCI. Now ये जो news है that QCI is coming up with a QCI सुरक्षा recognition and ranking framework. ये है क्या? What is this? What is the purpose of this thing? The purpose is to enhance citizens' quality of life by recognizing by recognizing high performing states and organizations. What does it basically mean? ये इसका मतलब क्या है? इसका मतलब ये है कि we have 28 states, ठीक है? अब ये 28 states का क्या किया जाएगा? Based on the quality of life. अब देखो quality of life, there are different factors, ठीक है? There are different factors mentioned here. There are different factors mentioned here. I'll go to that. मान लो कि the quality of life अलग अलग स्टेट है, असम, वेस्ट बंगाल, बिहार, झारखंड, महाराष्ट्र, तमिलनाडु, केरला, कर्नाटका, हिमाचल प्रदेश, जम्मू एंड कश्मीर, so on and so forth. There are different states and union territories, ठीक है? What they will do is that अलग अलग स्टेट में the अलग अलग state governments they will provide certain quality of life to its citizens, ठीक है? They will provide a certain quality of life to its citizens. So depending upon what kind of degree of quality they are providing to their citizens, the states will be ranked depending on the quality of life they are providing to their citizens. They will be ranked. How they will be ranked in this index? The QCI Suraksha Recognition and Ranking Framework, ठीक है? And उससे क्या होगा? जो top rankings होगा, of course the high performing states. The high performing states basically the states who end up providing a higher quality of life, a better quality of life to its citizens. They will be ranked as high performing states and they will be put at the top of the ranking in this particular ranking framework. Now abhi quality of life decide hoga kaise? How will you judge कि ये quality of life अच्छा है या नहीं है, on what kind of criteria? So the criteria is mentioned here. The criteria includes शिक्षा, स्वास्थ्य, समृद्धि and सुशासन. Now what are these pillars? Shiksha basically means education. What the quality of education that a particular state is providing to its citizens. Swasthya or the health infrastructure or the health facilities that a particular state is providing. Samriddhi, prosperity or development. In which state development is faster, better, and more inclusive. Inclusive as in it's not leaving out any sector or community of people in the state. It's including each and every community and group of people within the state in the race and goal of development. And Sushasan, good governance, that how well is this government of the state governing the administration and the civil and criminal matters of the state. Now ये चार चीजों के बेसिस पे एजुकेशन, हेल्थ, प्रॉस्पेरिटी और डेवलपमेंट and governance. Based on these four criteria, the states will be ranked. These four criteria will make up the total quality of life index, and based on the points or the ratings gained on these four pillars, the different states will be ranked to what kind of life quality they are providing to their citizen, and whichever states get the highest number of marks or accreditations and grades, they will be ranked as high performing states at the top. उससे क्या होगा? दिस विल लीड टू कंपेटिटिव फेडरलिज्म. व्हाट इज कंपेटिटिव फेडरलिज्म मींस? होता क्या है, आप अलग अलग स्टेट्स को एक कंपटीशन में डाल देते हो कि कौन कितना अच्छा है. उससे क्या होता है? टू बी अ बेटर वर्जन, टू बी एट द टॉप ऑफ द रैंकिंग्स, दे स्टार्ट टू डू बेटर एंड बेटर, दे एंडीवर फॉर बेटर एंड बेटर गोल्स. एंड इससे क्या होता है? सारे स्टेट्स एक साथ दे एक्सेल एट द सेम टाइम. मतलब इट्स लाइक सेइंग कि मैंने मान लो क्लास में कह दिया कि आज से मैंने क्लास में आपको नोट्स बनाने दे दिया कि सब लोग नोट्स बनाओ, और मैंने कह दिया कि जो सबसे अच्छा नोट्स बनाएगा उसको मैं एक चॉकलेट खिला दूँ. ठीक है? तो उससे होता क्या है? एक कंपटीशन बन जाता है. उससे क्या होता है? उस चॉकलेट के लिए सब लोग नोट्स अच्छे से बनाएंगे, और इससे क्या होगा? कंपटीशन के चक्कर में सभी लोग अच्छा नोट्स बना के ले आएंगे. हाँ, someone might be slightly better and someone might be slightly the best, but everybody will come up with a good performance because there is a reward in the end. So इससे क्या होता है? When you're putting this reward of being a high rank state in the rankings, it leads to competitive federalism. Competitive federalism में क्या होता है? All states are put in a competition, and as a result of being put in a competition, they try to outperform each other कि नहीं, मेरा state best होगा, मेरा state best होगा. And to be the best, they try to be a better version of themselves. They give a better performance, and इससे क्या होता है? There is a more inclusive and more faster development in every state at the same time. कोई पीछे नहीं रह जाता है. Now let's come to another news, another matter for our current affairs. This news comes from the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. ठीक है? So what does the news piece of news say? The Union Environment Minister Shri Bhupender Yadav says India adds 3 more wetlands to the list of Ramsar sites on the eve of Independence Day 2024. Now इसका मतलब क्या होता है? ये रामसर साइट होता क्या है? Now let me tell you what Ramsar sites are. Ramsar sites are nothing but a list of wetlands which need to be protected. ठीक है? Heritage wetlands, wetlands which have a lot of biodiversity and which need to be protected from the ill effects of climate change. उन wetlands को एक लिस्ट में ऐड कर दिया जाता है, और उस लिस्ट में ऐड करने के बाद they are designated as Ramsar sites. तो क्या हुआ? 3 wetlands in India were recently added to this particular list, and they were designated as Ramsar sites. ठीक है? And when were they added? They were added to this list on the eve of Independence Day, which is 14th of August. Now let's look at which are the 3 wetlands which were added to this list recently. First one is Nanjarayan Bird Sanctuary. Where is it located? It is located in Tirupur district of Tamil Nadu state. And what is the significance of this particular bird sanctuary? It was named after a king whose name was Nanjarayan, and it spans across 2 villages. मतलब 2 गांव में फैला हुआ है. The size of this particular bird sanctuary, it is spread across the size equivalent to 2 villages. ठीक है? The next site, ये तो हो गया. The next site is the Kazuveli Bird Sanctuary. Now, where is it located? It is located in the Villupuram district in Tamil Nadu state. This Villupuram district is situated towards the north of Pondicherry or Puducherry. And what is the significance? It was declared the 16th bird sanctuary in Tamil Nadu in the year 2021. It is the largest wetland in peninsular India, and located on the Central Asian Flyway, a crucial migratory bird route. ये एक important bird sanctuary है. क्यों? बिकॉज इट इज द लार्जेस्ट वेटलैंड इन पेनिनसुलर इंडिया, ठीक है, सबसे बड़ा वेटलैंड है पेनिनसुलर इंडिया का। अलॉन्ग विद दैट सेंट्रल एशिया से जो बर्ड्स सीजनली माइग्रेट होकर इधर उड़ के आते हैं, ये उनके रूट में एक क्रूशियल ट्रांजिट पॉइंट है। व्हाई? बिकॉज द सेंट्रल दिस इज सेंट्रल एशिया, this is India, and this is the rest of the world, say, and this particular thing, this is the particular Kazuveli bird sanctuary, और birds यहाँ से उड़ के आते हैं, say this is their route, Central Asian flyway. So this particular thing is falling upon this Central Asian flyway, and hence it becomes a very crucial point or a transition point for this migratory bird route. I hope you're getting my point. So these are two of the three important wetlands which were added as Ramsar sites. Let's look at the last wetland, the Tawa Reservoir. Where is it located? It's located in Madhya Pradesh. Now, what are the important points and features to remember? It is the largest protected area in Madhya Pradesh, built at the confluence of the Tawa and Denwa rivers, located within Satpura Tiger Reserve, forming the western boundary of Satpura National Park and Bori Wildlife Sanctuary. The important points to remember here is that within the Kazuveli Bird Sanctuary, that was the largest wetland in peninsular India. Okay? Here, don't get confused. Here, the Tawa Reservoir, it is the largest protected area in the state of Madhya Pradesh. Only within the state of Madhya Pradesh, it is the largest protected area. Okay? And where is it built? There are two rivers that flow within the state, the Tawa River and the Denwa River. Where these two rivers are meeting, or where the confluence of these two rivers are taking place, at that particular site this Tawa Reservoir is located. ठीक है? And ये एक टाइगर रिजर्व के अंदर सिचुएटेड है. व्हाट इज द नेम ऑफ द टाइगर रिजर्व? द सतपुरा टाइगर रिजर्व ऑफ एमपी. ठीक है, इट इज सिचुएटेड विद इन द सतपुरा टाइगर रिजर्व ऑफ एमपी. और ये क्या करता है? इट फॉर्म्स अ बॉर्डर रीजन between the Satpura Tiger Reserve and a wildlife sanctuary जिसका नाम है बोरी Wildlife Sanctuary. ठीक है? So the points to remember in Tawa Reservoir is it's in मध्य प्रदेश. मध्य प्रदेश का लार्जेस्ट सबसे बड़ा प्रोटेक्टेड एरिया है. ठीक है? टू रिवर्स तवा एंड देनवा, इन दोनों रिवर्स का जो मीटिंग पॉइंट है, इट इज सिचुएटेड एट दैट पर्टिकुलर मीटिंग पॉइंट. ठीक है? एंड दिस रिजर्वायर इज सिचुएटेड विद इन the tiger reserve, which is known as the Satpura Tiger Reserve, and it forms the border region between the Satpura Tiger Reserve and the Pori Wildlife Sanctuary. ठीक है? Now here I would like to highlight another thing. Here I would like to highlight another thing कि देखो, in any kind of exam, questions regarding bird sanctuaries, wildlife sanctuaries, wetlands, national parks, tiger reserve, protected areas, biodiversity parks pop up. ठीक है? But but the list is huge. India में there are a lot of wetlands, lot of wildlife sanctuaries, bird sanctuaries, Ramsar sites, this, that, a lot of things. ठीक है? Now you might be thinking कि सर सब कुछ याद कैसे रखे? How to remember everything? ये तो random नाम है. Some important names are like Kaziranga National Park or the Jim Corbett National Park, Ranthambore. You will think that वही important है. उसके अलावा ये सब अब कैसे याद रखे? How to remember this? See, what you have to do here basically is that whenever these things come in the news, right? Whenever a particular random bird sanctuary from India comes in the news, or a wildlife sanctuary or any kind of natural area comes in the news, you have to take a note of that area. ठीक है? And you have to not just, अब यहाँ पे news इतना ही आया है कि it has been added as in the list of Ramsar sites. ठीक है? You have to, whenever you see the name of such a place which has been added to a certain list of endangered list, red list, Ramsar site list, wherever, you need to take a note of the name of that bird sanctuary, wildlife sanctuary, national park, or whatever, and you need to do a point wise background study कि ये है कहाँ पे located, and इसका feature क्या है, what is the significance or points to remember or the salient feature of this particular place. Jot it down and then revise it later on, because the highest probability यही होता है कि यूपीएससी ना कोई भी रैंडमली वाइल्ड लाइफ सेंचुरी उठा के नहीं दे देगा एग्जाम. यूपीएससी ऐसा ही एक वाइल्ड लाइफ सेंचुरी उठा के देगा एग्जाम में जो लास्ट एक साल में या 1.5 साल में या 6 महीने में इट वाज इन द न्यूज रिगार्डिंग सम काइंड ऑफ मैटर. ठीक है? देखो, जो इंपॉर्टेंट नेशनल पार्क्स है, दोज आर द इंपॉर्टेंट नेशनल पार्क्स इन वाइल्ड लाइफ सेंचुरीज, लाइक काजीरंगा, जिम कॉर्बेट, Ranthambore, so on and so forth. गिर नेशनल पार्क, दीज आर वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग्स। ये अगर न्यूज में नहीं भी होंगे तो इनका सवाल आ सकता है, दैट इज अ डिफरेंट थिंग। बट अदर देन दैट, दीज थिंग्स विच जो उतना इंपॉर्टेंटली लिखा हुआ रहता नहीं है बुक में, इनको आपको ऐसे याद करना है कि ये न्यूज में आया, इमीडिएटली नोट द नेम डाउन। एंड ये अदर देन ये न्यूज में क्यों आया, जस्ट डू अ जनरलाइज्ड बैकग्राउंड चेक ऑन दीज प्लेसेस। एंड होगा क्या कि यूपीएससी इन्हीं में से एक उठा के पेपर में फेंक देगा एंड यू विल हैव टू आंसर दैट। चलो, वी हैव कवर्ड सर्टेन न्यूज, ठीक है। अभी वी विल डिस्कस सर्टेन कीवर्ड्स, ठीक है। सर्टेन कीवर्ड्स और बेसिकली terminologies which are quite technical in its substance, and we should be knowing the meaning of this the technicalities of these terms in order to write these exams, ठीक है। तो ये न्यूज देखो, वाइस प्रेसिडेंट जगदीप धनखड़ echoes भागवत equates demographic disorder with atom bombs, ठीक है। नाउ our vice president Mr. Jagdeep Dhankar, he is using a term known as demographic disorder, ठीक है। Now what is the meaning of demographic disorder, ठीक है, let's go deeper into that। Demographic disorder refers to a significant imbalance or disruption in a population structure, often caused by factors like aging, migration, low fertility rates, or rapid population growth, leading to social and economic challenges। पहले लेट्स नो कि डेमोग्राफी का मतलब क्या होता है। डेमोग्राफी का मतलब होता है द कंपोजिशन एंड नेचर ऑफ पॉपुलेशन इन अ रीजन, ठीक है। मतलब कि मान लो देयर इज अ सर्टेन पॉपुलेशन ऑफ 100 रीजन, ये एक रीजन है, ठीक है, एंड 100 पीपल आर लिविंग इन दिस रीजन, ठीक है। अब इसमें क्या होगा, ये 100 लोगों में से मान लो 20 पीपल आर 60 प्लस ओल्ड पीपल, 20 पीपल आर 60 प्लस, some 50 people are between the age of 30 to 60, ठीक है। 10 people are below 30, ठीक है। एंड इसमें से देर आर डिफरेंट अदर डिफरेंशिएशन एज वेल कि विद इन 100 पीपल 50 आर हिंदी स्पीकिंग, 30 आर मराठी स्पीकिंग, बाकी द रेस्ट आर स्पीकिंग इन अ साउथ इंडियन लैंग्वेज, ठीक है। या फिर मान लो आउट ऑफ दिस 100 पीपल 50 पीपल आर स्पीकिंग इन एसएमईज, 30 पीपल आर स्पीकिंग इन बंगाली, द rest 20 are speaking other languages such as Marwari, Punjabi, so on and so forth, ठीक है। So this is a demo, so ये composition हो गया, ये उस एरिया के पॉपुलेशन का एक सर्टेन कंपोजिशन हो गया ना, कि इट इज कंपोज्ड ऑफ दिस कंपोनेंट्स, एंड ये कंपोनेंट्स एज ग्रुप्स, रेशियल ग्रुप्स, रिलीजियंस, ये सारे मिलके दे आर मेकिंग अ सर्टेन कंपोजिशन ऑफ द पॉपुलेशन। तो होता क्या है, ये जो पॉपुलेशन का कंपोजिशन बन रहा है, दिस कंपोजिशन ऑफ ए पॉपुलेशन इज नोन एज द डेमोग्राफी ऑफ दैट पॉपुलेशन, ठीक है। डेमोग्राफी ऑफ दैट रीजन, डेमोग्राफी इज नथिंग बट पॉपुलेशन का कंपोजिशन, कि इसमें बूढ़े लोग कितने हैं, बच्चे कितने हैं, हिंदू कितने हैं, मुस्लिम कितने हैं, क्रिश्चियन कितने हैं, हिंदी बोलने वाले कितने हैं, एसमिस बोलने वाले कितने हैं, बंगाली बोलने वाले कितने हैं, तमिल बोलने वाले कितने हैं, दैट मेक्स अप दी होल डेमोग्राफी, ठीक है। तो अब हर जगह का, एवरी प्लेस हैज इट्स ओन डेमोग्राफी, एक पर्टिकुलर डेमोग्राफी होगा, ठीक है। दे हैव अ सर्टेन नॉर्मल डेमोग्राफी, मतलब इतने ही बूढ़े लोग होते हैं। जैसे मान लो इन असम, ठीक है, in Assam we have a certain demography that this amount of people they speak Assamese, this amount of people speak Bengali, this amount of people speak Hindi, this amount of people speak Punjabi and other languages, ठीक है। And there is a certain amount of people who are senior citizens, certain amount of people who are middle aged, certain amount of teenagers, certain amounts of infants, ठीक है। अभी ये हो गया यहाँ का मान लो डेमोग्राफी, यानी यहाँ का एक नॉर्मल पॉपुलेशन कंपोजिशन। नाउ व्हाट हैपेंस इज दैट, अगर ये डेमोग्राफी में कोई डिसऑर्डर होता है, डिसऑर्डर मतलब गड़बड़, सम काइंड ऑफ प्रॉब्लम, डेमोग्राफी डिसऑर्डर के टाइम होता ये है कि ये जो कंपोजिशन है ना, दिस पर्टिकुलर कंपोजिशन ऑफ द पॉपुलेशन, this particular composition of the population gets disrupted, there is an imbalance in this composition। So what imbalance, how does this imbalance takes place, या देर आर डिफरेंट फैक्टर्स लाइक एजिंग. मान लो कि एजिंग इज फास्टर, ठीक है, लोग ज्यादा जल्दी बूढ़े हो रहे हैं बट जवान लोग कमने लगे हैं, ठीक है. सो व्हाट विल हैपन, मेजोरिटी ऑफ द पॉपुलेशन विल बी मोर एजिड, ठीक है. उससे क्या होगा, बूढ़े लोग ज्यादा हो जाएंगे सोसाइटी में, यंगर पीपल विल बिकम फ्यूअर, ठीक है. बूढ़े लोग ज्यादा होंगे तो काम कम होगा, प्रोडक्टिविटी विल बिकम लेस, डेमोग्राफी विल गो इनटू डिसऑर्डर. माइग्रेशन, मान लो कि बाहर के कुछ लोग आ गए ज्यादा यहाँ पे, ठीक है. जैसे Assam has a particular demography, but due to a lot of illegal migration from Bangladesh, a lot of Bangladeshi people have come and settled in Assam. बांग्लादेश से असम घुसते जा रहे हैं, घुसते जा रहे हैं, घुसते जा रहे हैं, ठीक है. बिकॉज ऑफ दिस पीपल व्हाट इज हैपनिंग इज दैट असम का जो बाय डिफॉल्ट डेमोग्राफी था दैट इज गेटिंग डिसबैलेंस्ड, ठीक है. अदर थिंग्स लाइक लो फर्टिलिटी रेट, लो फर्टिलिटी रेट मतलब बच्चे पैदा कम हो रहे हैं, ठीक है. उससे क्या होगा कि पॉपुलेशन बढ़ेगा ही नहीं, लेकिन डेथ रेट चलता रहेगा. सो द पॉपुलेशन साइज, मान लो 100 लोग थे, अभी देर आर ओनली 50 पीपल. व्हाई? बिकॉज पीपल आर डाइंग बट पीपल आर नॉट गेटिंग बॉर्न, ठीक है. और रैपिड पॉपुलेशन ग्रोथ, मान लो 100 लोग रहते हैं एक एरिया में, 100 लोगों का ही रहने का जगह है, ठीक है. अचानक से इतना पॉपुलेशन रैपिडली बढ़ गया, डेथ रेट कम गया, बर्थ रेट बढ़ गया, सडनली गेट्स डबल टू 200. अब 100 लोगों के रहने का जगह है, अचानक से 200 लोग हो गए. इट विल पोस्ट अ डिसऑर्डर, it will post a challenge that how to accommodate so many people in this area which was originally meant for only 100 people, ठीक है. सो इस डिसऑर्डर से होता क्या है, it leads to a lot of social and economic challenges. Some examples, let's look at it. As I already mentioned, the demographic disorder caused by Bangladeshi immigrants in the tribal lands of northeast India led to widespread agitation like the Assam movement in the 1970s. As I already gave this example, Assam had its own demography, own natural demography. It's like what to say, it's natural demography, the demography that it has been having since many years. But suddenly a lot of illegal Bangladeshi immigrants, they have just tried to push into the territory out of forcefully nowhere illegally, and they have been crossing the borders. And उससे हो क्या रहा है, यहाँ का जो ये लोग आगे सेटल हो जाते हैं ट्राइबल लैंड्स में. नाउ द ट्राइबल पीपल ऑफ असम, or even in the non-tribal areas, the native people of Assam, they have a certain demographic for the population composition. But जैसे ये लोग आगे घुस जाते हैं घुसपैठिए जैसे, तो होता क्या है कि दिस composition gets changed, डिसऑर्डर हो जाता है. डिसऑर्डर क्योंकि अचानक से बाहर से एक पर्टिकुलर ग्रुप आ गया जो यहाँ का हिस्सा ही नहीं है. और as soon as this group comes into play, it causes a major change in the demography or the population composition, ठीक है. उससे population में और demography में एक disorder आ जाता है. And because of such disorders, it has also led to a lot of protests and agitation in Assam, like the Assam movement or the Assam Andolan, which ultimately led to the Assam Accord in the 1980s, which was signed between the AGP, the Assam government, the national government, the union, and the ASU, which is the All Assam Students Union. ठीक है. एक और एग्जांपल इज द rapidly declining fertility rates in countries like Japan, Italy and Greece has led to a demographic disorder with an aging population and a shrinking workforce, posing a long term economic risk. मतलब क्या है, इन तीन कंट्रीज में, इन जापान, इटली एंड ग्रीस, व्हाट्स हैपनिंग इज दैट द फर्टिलिटी रेट्स आर डिक्रीजिंग. मतलब newborn babies, the number of people newly born is decreasing, while the number of people dying is same. Number of people, the rate of aging, the rate of dying is same, but the rate of new babies being born is decreasing. उससे क्या हो रहा है, एज अ रिजल्ट यंगर पीपल आर रिड्यूसिंग. अगर बच्चे कम पैदा हो रहे हैं और लोग मर ज्यादा रहे हैं और बूढ़े ज्यादा हो रहे हैं, then what will happen is that naturally the number of young people will reduce and the number of older people will increase. Now older people don't work, they retire or they die eventually with time. काम कौन करता है, यंगर पीपल फ्रॉम द वर्कफोर्स, ठीक है. तो उससे हो क्या रहा है, इफ यंगर पीपल आर रिड्यूसिंग, द वर्कफोर्स इज श्रिंकिंग, प्रोडक्टिविटी इन दिस कंट्रीज आर श्रिंकिंग, ठीक है. लोग मर ज्यादा रहे हैं, उससे पॉपुलेशन का नंबर भी कम हो रहा है, बिकॉज न्यू पीपल आर डिक्रीजिंग, बट पीपल मतलब आने वाले लोग कम हो रहे हैं, ठीक है. मान लो 100 लोग हैं, देयर आर 100 पीपल, अर्लियर 10 पीपल यूज्ड टू कम, 10 पीपल यूज्ड टू लीव, ठीक है. सो द नंबर इज स्टेइंग एज 100. अब हो क्या रहा है कि ओनली 1 पर्सन इज कमिंग एंड 20 पीपल आर लीविंग, ठीक है. यहाँ पे नेट नंबर आप देखो 10 जा रहा है, 10 आ रहा है, इट विल स्टे एज 100 ओनली, बट लुक हियर, इट विल कम डाउन टू 80. एक नया आदमी आएगा, इट विल कम टू 81. देखो 19 लोग कम गए, 19 पीपल रिड्यूस्ड हियर, ठीक है. एंड इसमें से भी इफ द नंबर इज रिड्यूसिंग, मेजोरिटी ऑफ देम आर ऑफ द ओल्डर एज, ठीक है, ये काम नहीं करता है, जो जवान लोग है वो कम है, तो उससे फायदा क्या हो रहा है? और इससे क्या होगा, इट विल पोज लॉन्ग टर्म इकोनॉमिक रिस्क। करेंटली ये धीरे धीरे हो रहा है, बट इन अ लॉन्ग टर्म व्यू, आज से कुछ टाइम जाने के बाद, फ्यू इयर्स फ्यू डेकेड्स फ्रॉम नाउ, व्हाट विल हैपन इज दैट अगर यंग पॉपुलेशन इतना कम हो गया, इफ द वर्क फोर्स बिकम सो लेस, productivity will come down, and this will in turn affect the GDP of the countries and bring their production and money down. Now let's look at another keyword. Okay, sexual violence faced by disabled girls highlights the double marginalization they endure. This is a dual vulnerability for the women. Now double marginalization, इसका मतलब क्या है? ठीक है, marginalization basically means getting marginalized or kind of getting alienated or separated from the rest of the society due to some kind of problem. वैसे तो it should not take place because our society should be an equal society and it should be indiscriminate towards each and every individual irrespective of whatever background they are coming from, whatever drawbacks they are having. Irrespective of that, the society should be indiscriminate to everyone, but unfortunately, even in today's world, a few individuals, they get marginalized because of some issue or the other. Marginalized being means being alienated or getting discriminated or separated from the majority or rest of the society due to some issue or the other, due to some disadvantage. Now, what is double marginalization? Double marginalization refers to the compounded disadvantage faced by individual or groups who belong to multiple marginalized categories experiencing exclusion or discrimination on two fronts such as gender, caste, race or class. Double marginalization का मतलब क्या हो गया? मतलब देखो, marginalization means that you have some disadvantage based on some kind of issue like race, your gender, your caste, or whatever basis of one of these criteria, you are getting marginalized from the society. But what will happen in double marginalization is that you are getting separated from the society because of two different reasons. ठीक है, जैसे देखो, women safety is a very big issue in our society. ठीक है, women are already getting marginalized based on their safety in the society. ठीक है, plus if it's a disabled woman, disabled people face another kind of marginalization where they are not uh, much more included in the normal life by the other people who are not disabled. जो disabled लोग हैं उनको already marginalize किया जाता है कि आप disabled हो and they are getting marginalized, which is a very wrong thing to do. ठीक है, along with that, women हो, then women safety का जो marginalization हो रहा है आपको वो भी face करना पड़ रहा है. मतलब आपको दो दो problems face करने पड़ रहे हैं. First you are having to face a problem because you're a woman, you are undergoing sexual violence, then you are having to face a problem because you are disabled, you are getting marginalized for being disabled also. तो you are आपको यहाँ पे discriminate किया जा रहा है because of two reasons. ठीक है, so that is known as double marginalization. Let's look at some examples here. First example is Dalit women in India experience double marginalization, facing discrimination as both women and lower caste members depending their social and economic exclusion. मतलब दलित वुमेन, पहले तो उनका कास्ट छोटा है बोल के उनको मार्जिनलाइज कर रहे हैं, ऊपर से वो औरत है तो वुमेन राइट्स कम है बोल के उसके लिए भी उनको मार्जिनलाइज किया जा रहा है. सो दे आर फेसिंग अ डबल ट्रबल इन दिस केस. Then here in many societies, disabled women experience double marginalization, facing barriers not only due to their disability but also due to gender bias, limiting their access to education, employment, and healthcare. Unfortunately, in many parts of our country, even till date, women face discrimination because of their gender. ठीक है, they become a part of the patriarchal society. ऊपर से विमेन होने का तो उनको marginalize किया ही जा रहा है. Above that, since they are disabled, for being disabled also they are being marginalized in a separate way. तो उससे क्या हो रहा है, आपको दो कारणों की वजह से you are getting discriminated. You are getting discriminated because of two different reasons. In this kind of cases, it is said that you are being double marginalized, or this is known as double marginalization. So this will be it for today. This was the last topic that we are discussing for today. I hope that this session was useful for all the aspirants out there. You could get an idea about the different topics that are going on in the news currently and the possible questions that you can get from these topics. I hope आपको idea आ रहा है ये current affairs पढ़ना कैसे है, which type of current affairs should you select and read from the newspapers, and what kind of questions you should expect from them. And yes, please go through PYQs, the PYQs that were asked from current affairs of the previous years, so that you know that which concepts or which uh, tenets or nuances of these news articles are targeted by the UPSC for throwing a question at you. Uh, and of course, please make notes of these keywords that I will be discussing at regular basis. Because if these terms do come up in any question, and if you're not familiar with them, it will pose a bit of problem for you. And for improving this, one advice that I would like to give to everyone is please get into regular reading. Start with newspaper reading on a daily basis. Other than that, start reading books outside your academic books, novels, articles, research papers, so on and so forth. And yes, if you follow these things regularly and at a consistent basis, it should be really easy for you to clear the exam. So that's it for today. uh, I'll be taking your leave, and I will be coming back in the next session to discuss further topics from current affairs and important questions that may pop up from these particular topics. Thank you.